And now, we bring you the following live press announcement from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. Our regularly scheduled program will resume following the announcement.
Hello everyone, and welcome to KBAC LGBTQ plus community. It gives me great honor to speak here before you about myself and about the purpose for the shelter. Before I get started, someone lost their key. All right. Okay. Hi, my name is Mrs. Barbara A. Martin, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here this morning. I'd like to share a little bit of my story, a story not uncommon with the LGBTQ plus community. To recognize that you are different from others during your youth can be daunting. To recognize that the uncertainty of who you are and how you feel is looked upon as abnormal, evil, and embarrassment. Shame to your family is traumatizing. At the young age of 19, I burst out of the closet to my parents and told them that I was a lesbian. Already filled with ambivalence and fear of what to expect of my parents' reaction to my announcement, I was shocked even more at my parents' outbursts of shame and ridicule. The emotional and verbal abuse I experienced was unbearable, resulting in me leaving home and finding comfort in the arms of alcohol. My story of addiction, homelessness, and mental health is one that has been hard many times in the LGBTQ plus community. The story of losing our identity when we identify ourselves, choosing to love ourselves, and losing everyone we ever loved. The introduction to judgment, guilt, blame, shame, fear, depression, and hopelessness, leaving everything we have ever known and trying to start a new life. With little to no resources and support, may seem as if homelessness is a rite of passage for our community. But today, with the help of Mayor Bowser, the community partnership, the Coalition for the Homeless, and KBAC group, we allow hope, acceptance, encouragement, stability, and empowerment to be the new rite of passage for the LGBTQ community. I think I can speak for the entire community when I say that as a result of being stigmatized, we become depressed, have fears of being judged, consider or attempt suicide, suffer from substance abuse, struggle with mental health and physical health, and become survivors of physical and sexual violence. It's my pleasure to confidently say that this shelter will not only provide members of the community a bed, but it will be a transitional home where people can find security, acceptance, trauma-informed care, and safe. To be safe is the main purpose of our community. With that, I'd like to introduce the leader who listened to the needs of our community and helped to make this shelter happen. I introduce Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Let's give Barbara a big round of applause. I know a lot of people will hear your words and find their own experience and your experience, and also hear that the city is listening and trying to make our city a welcoming, affirming place for all of our residents. So that's why I am so thrilled to be here, where today we will cut the ribbon on an adult shelter for our LGBTQ plus residents. And I'm very happy for everyone who has been working so hard on this issue. I see so many people in the audience here on a very hot parking lot. that have likely worked and contributed to the planning and will be here every step of the way for the execution. I want to thank members of my team who you will hear from, but also acknowledge members of the council who are here, our host council member and former mayor, Vincent Gray. Give Councilmember Gray a round of applause. As well as the Ward 1 council member and chair of the Human Services Committee, Councilmember Nadeau. Give her a round of applause. So let me just say a couple of things, and you will also hear from Director Laura Zeilinger, who has led the district's homeless services and human services for the last 7.5 years, where we have achieved great results, but we have a lot of big work ahead of us. So Laura will be talking to you momentarily. But let me just say, earlier in the year, we talked about homelessness with some specificity. We were able to announce then that we had a 47% decrease in homelessness since 2016, since we began implementing and funding our Homeward DC plan. And that drop, that 47% drop, is very significant, and it was driven by our intense work and the 78% decrease in family homelessness. In January, we were in Ward 8 at the St. Elizabeth's campus to open our new 801 East Men's Shelter. And the opening of this new men's shelter was a big step toward replicating the progress that we saw in our family system in the single system. And so now opening this shelter for LGBTQ plus adults is another important step. We recognized at the new men's shelter, and we are recognizing with this shelter, is that people experience homelessness differently for different reasons and in different ways. And that people avoid homeless shelters also for a multitude of reasons. We know, and we have seen it in the creation of our small, dignified family shelters, that when we get shelter right, people will come into shelter. And when they're experiencing emergencies, they can use the shelter as a place to deal with the emergency and then be on the pathway to safe, permanent housing. And we can begin to break those barriers. And it is important that we break down barriers that prevent people from coming into shelter, because we know, and Laura will talk about our experience, is that when we can get people stabilized, they will make it in permanent housing. That's what we've been able to do in our family system, and that's what we will do in our single system for adults. I also want to recognize our director of the LGBTQ office, the mayor's office, Japer Bowles, who is here. Thank you, Japer, for your work on this project as well. And Japer has been working on this project since before he joined our administration, and we know we can count on him for continued great work. We know that our LGBTQ plus residents of every age, from the teenagers that we heard Barbara describe, to our seniors, face a range of barriers that make choosing safe housing a challenge. And so, as you can see here today, we are committed to making sure this shelter is an access point and an opportunity for the community. And most importantly, we are committed to connecting people who come to shelter to permanent housing. You will continue to hear that it is a major push of our administration to make sure that we are building affordable housing and building it at record levels. I want to thank the council for its approval of our historic proposal of over $450 million that's going to to the Housing Production Trust Fund. One thing that Laura likes to remind us of is that our human services and our homeless services response is really designed to deal with emergency housing when people are experiencing emergencies. But we have to make sure that the rest of the government is building and preserving affordable housing on the other side of this emergency experience. So you got my commitment to keeping and getting it done. And now I want to recognize our directors, Laura Zeilinger and Director Japer Bowles. I'm going to start with Laura, and then you'll hear from Japer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to put my flag here. We can see if it stays. I am so incredibly happy to be here today. I am thrilled with the turnout because today is such a great celebration, and we look forward to continuing to celebrate such important milestones in our systems. I want to thank the mayor for championing these efforts, and our Deputy Mayor Turnage, our council members, Councilmember Gray Nadeau, who are here with us, my colleague, Japer, and Miss Martin for sharing her story, and our partner organizations. We don't do anything by ourselves. We do it with community. So we've got DC Central Kitchen with their food truck, and they're going to be helping us with meals. We have you're going to be hearing, or maybe not, from Quebec, who is providing services here. The coalition, Michael Farrell, who has joined us, has owned this building and been a tremendous partner for decades on homeless services in the district. And it is really people coming together to say that we have had shelter for LGBTQ plus youth for a long time in our system. We recognize that need and that importance, but as people are adults, similarly, we need to have affirming, safe shelter if we want people to come inside and be safe in the emergency. And so homelessness, we know, particularly as we experience the economic devastation from COVID, can happen to anyone, as the mayor said, for a variety of reasons. And when it does, our values as a community is we need to provide the care that people need and the safety they need so that they can regain a safe, stable place that is home. It is that dignity and that kind of service and safety that is required in our efforts to end homelessness, to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. I want to acknowledge that part of why we are here today is because the LGBTQ plus community has been vocal in their advocacies about this gap in our system, and we are listening. We see you, we hear you. Arlene, Bud, I've gotten your emails for years and received them, good and bad, and also telling us about the tragedies and how we do better. And when I say we only do this work together as a community, it is because we hear where our blind spots are, we hear where the gaps are, and it is that kind of dialogue that helps us do better and raises the bar. I hate to shift this celebratory mood, but I do think this is an important moment to acknowledge what that means and the importance. And it was actually in a communication, I believe, from Ms. Budd that I learned about this, that a significant date that brought us to this day was June 13th, 2019. That was the day that Zoe Spears, a 23-year-old trans woman who was experiencing homelessness, was shot and killed. This happened a short time after Ashanti Carmen, another trans woman, was killed in March of 2019. The district was faced with the reality of the trauma that this community encounters, a trauma that is only compounded by homelessness. This shelter is a needed addition to our single system, and we are so happy to be opening it today, and we must remember the lives lost while we think about the essential services that we will offer, so that those hopefully can be things, that kind of violence and that kind of vulnerability can be something of our past. Here, residents will receive, and we can clap for that, thank you. That's a good thing. Residents will be able to receive case management services, psychosocial supports, GED readiness training, life skills training, substance use disorder services, help with employment, job placement, and linkages to community resources, all with the goal of successful transition to housing and economic stability. Now, we're a housing first jurisdiction, and our focus will be helping people to permanent housing, but with the other supports they need as well. The vision is that this place will be a home in transition to a permanent home. And every home, even a transitional home, needs a name. And I'm thrilled to say that DHS will partner with Director Japer Bowles in the Mayor's Office of LGBTQ Careers in sourcing the community input and naming the shelter. So stay tuned. We have been calling it the LGBTQ plus adult shelter. That is not going to be the name, I promise. In closing, I would again like to thank the mayor, our partners. I want to acknowledge the community partnership for the prevention of homelessness. Although they are not here today, they are fully here in all of the ways they work with us and all in achieving all of these goals that we have to grow our programs. KBEC Group for taking on this new groundbreaking project with us. And this is truly the embodiment of how we work together to do better as a community. So with that, I think I am turning it over to my colleague.
Give you my flag. Yes. All right. Good afternoon, Washington, D.C. How are we doing today? Yeah, greetings. Well, my name is Japer Bowles. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I have the honor and privilege of being the chief advocate for our LGBTQ plus community for the D.C. government under the leadership of our mayor, Muriel Bowser. First, I want to thank Mayor Bowser for her leadership, vision, and frankly, our courage to address the systemic injustices and to champion our LGBTQ plus community. Dr. Laura Zeilinger, we know your experience helping end chronic homelessness for our families in D.C., and I want to commend you for that work and for also leading a robust LGBTQ dedicated housing division. And that's why we're here today, to celebrate the historic investments and enhancements of housing dedicated for our LGBTQ plus community. Across the country, we know that members of our LGBTQIA community, particularly our trans, gender nonconforming, and non-binary family members, face some of the highest rates of discrimination in housing. The services available at this shelter, from case management to psychosocial supports to life skills training to substance use disorder services and linkage to community resources, will be impactful, and this will be a safe haven for members of our community. But, as the mayor said, most importantly, we are committed to connecting people who come to this shelter and all shelters to permanent housing and to making sure that people have what they need to live a safe, healthy, and happy life in DC. I'm proud to live and work and advocate in this city, which continues to lead the nation in resources for our LGBTQ plus community members. From housing to workforce to community safety, our city is the standard bearer across the nation. But it's not just because of the folks that have previously spoke. It's also because of you in the audience. We have a very strong and proud LGBTQ community advocates. I just want to say this surely is a full circle moment for me. Last year, I, along with dozens of other LGBTQ advocates, many that are in the audience today, dug in deep to better understand the housing issues facing our LGBTQ plus community, our trans community, our gender non-conforming community, and our non-binary community. We identified a solution, hey, low barrier shelter, and potential programming, and then we advocated. We advocated the mayor and DC council. Countless meetings, emails, phone calls, social media blasts, and of course, budget engagement forums. Truly, blood, sweat, and tears. But y'all, we did it. We did this thing. We also had willing allies and partners in the government, and we are now here on this beautiful, yet hot, day to celebrate this resource. So, thank you, DC Budget, Coalition, DC LGBTQ plus Budget Coalition for your partnership. Specifically, and I know I'm missing some folks in here, but I have to give shout outs to Kimberly Bush from the DC Center, Dr. Woody from Mary's House of Older Adults, Tanya Cordova, Diana Fitz from Casa Ruby, George Kerr, one of the leading seniors and veterans coordinators and advocates, Larry Villegas from OHR, who of course, and Leandria Gillum from OHR, who have been there for us, Basha from Damien Ministries, and of course, Miss Erlene Budd from Everything, the continued advocate. I'm also proud to say that, y'all, we have more of these to do. The mayor's FY23 budget builds on more than $20 million of annual investments for our LGBTQ community across all district government, with new investments not just in housing, but also workforce and public safety. So, in closing, I want to thank you again, our true allies, Mayor Muriel Bowser, our council members, and Director Zeilinger for your leadership and support of our community. And thank you, community members. It takes all of us working together to make these bold and beautiful investments come to fruition. Thank you again, and now I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Vincent Gray.
Well, thank you, Japer, and thank you, Laura, and my colleague who is here with me. Thank you so much for being a partner in this effort. It's delightful for me to be here, to be a part of an effort today to create more housing opportunities for people. And thank you, Mayor, for the work that's been done to be able to get us to this stage. So I'm going to be mercifully brief in this heat, as I'm sure we're happy to say that. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for coming out and being a part of making a statement that we're going to find housing for people no matter what their challenges may be. We can do this, right? Yeah. All right. Come on, everybody. Give it up. Let's have a big hand for those who want to be able to get additional housing as a result of this and other opportunities that we're going to have around the city. Thank you, Mayor. Let's do it.
Well, thank you to Mayor Gray and to the entire Ward 7 community. And we're looking forward, as we do with all of our short-term facilities, and having a direct relationship with our neighborhood and our community provider. So with that, I want to turn to Councilmember Nadeau, who has been a great advocate for housing. And for having a homeless services system that is designed, like Laura and her great team have been working on, to make sure that the system is designed to help people who are experiencing emergencies, but make sure they're connecting to all the services that we have for a successful transition. So with that, Brianna Nadeau.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. Congratulations, and congratulations to our Department of Human Services and our Office of LGBTQ plus Affairs. Thank you, Mayor Gray, for hosting us today and for welcoming the occupants of this space. It's really incredible. I'm really excited for KBEC to get to work here. For those who aren't familiar with them, they're doing incredible work already, serving youth who are exiting homelessness into stable housing, serving our people with disabilities, and they are well suited to run this site and to bring their heart and soul here like they do to the rest of their work. Thank you to DC Central Kitchen for being a part of this. My biggest and heartiest congratulations to the advocates who have worked so long and hard to see this day. We know there's more work to do, but your voices are being heard in the halls of government, and we are taking action to fulfill the agenda to fully serve our LGBTQ plus community with jobs, with housing, and with dignified lives here in the District of Columbia. So our work in human service is about protecting our most vulnerable residents, and that's why designated shelter for our LGBTQ plus adults is critical. we've heard, we know the stories that, and on the street, that our LGBTQ plus residents can be victims of violence and hate in a way that other residents aren't. They are even more vulnerable. And without a safe alternative, like a shelter like this, some will choose to stay on the street nonetheless. That's why I'm so proud that this space is now going to be available and serve this population with all of the challenges they face in mind. Miss Barbara Martin shared her story earlier. I want to thank her for being so brave to share her story with all of us and speak her truth. Let's give her a round of applause. She told me she's so excited to start work here because of the experience of her life. How lucky and blessed are the people who will come to stay here because they will have the experience of Miss Barbara working with them. They will have her life behind them and her lessons behind them. The sad thing is that her story of coming out to her parents and becoming ostracized is not unusual. And that's why in the district we have done so much work focusing on our LGBTQ plus youth who are experiencing homelessness and funding Solid Foundations, which is housing and supports and outreach to ensure that they don't become chronically homeless. We know that we can end chronic homelessness early if we have the right resources and supports for our youth. And that's been a hallmark of this government. So thank you, Mayor Bowser and your team, for prioritizing LGBTQ youth as well. I'm really proud of our government on days like this where we all come together to serve our most vulnerable residents. We should be proud of this ribbon cutting. We should be proud of the work that is to come. We should be proud of a space that will welcome people with love. And we will help ease their fears, and they know that this is a safe space. I unfortunately will leave right after this because Council's holding the hearing today on our sanctuary bill for abortion rights, for marriage, and for transgender affirming care. And we know our government is united in wanting to stand together to protect people who come here as we uphold those values. So I thank you. I think it's fitting that we're all here together today, and I apologize that I have to leave you. I hope everybody enjoys being together in this space. Thank you. And it's you.
So once again, I want to say thank you to everybody and just echo the great energy and celebratory spirit you heard in Japer. And I think Japer's remarks reflect what a lot of people who have been working on this issue in particular means to the community. And I'm proud that we have been able to deliver. So with that, we're going to have a ribbon cutting. But before we do that, I'm going to answer a few press questions, and then we'll move to the front of the building. Questions? Yes.
Estimate. Oh, thank you. When is the estimated
Laura
date?
tells me it's going to be in the first part of August, so I'll get you the exact date.
And another question I have, I know that there are estimates that homeless youth in the city, there are about nearly half of them are LGBTQ. I wonder if you have estimates on adults, and also how many beds is this shelter?
Sure. So Laura, the first question was, do we have a specific opening date? I know it's the first part of August. And secondly, can we estimate the number of LGBTQ adults in our homeless system?
Yeah. Great question. So we are very close to opening, and it will happen in but beginning of August. And we stay tuned on the exact date, but we're very close. Just getting every final thing in order. In terms of LGBTQ plus, we will serve 40 people at any given time in this building. Given that it's low barrier shelter, we know those beds will serve more than 40 people over the course of the year, because people come in and we work with them to get connected as they move to a place of permanency in terms of what's next. Approximately 18% of our, according to our point in time count, approximately 18% of our unsheltered population identify as LGBTQ+. Approximately 7% of our sheltered population identify as LGBTQ+, which tells you something about why we need this shelter, right? About 20% of the entire LGBTQ+ population who are known to across our emergency and transitional housing systems Also report a history of domestic violence. So it gives you sense, again, of what we already know, that there's a lot of trauma, there's been a lot of mistreatment. And so we are very, again, another reason why we know this has been a gap that we're very eager to fill in our system.
And if I could ask an off-topic question, if that's all right, about monkeypox. I'm wondering, DC saw a significant jump in cases, and I wonder if your health department has briefed you as to what is causing that. I mean, are they clusters of cases? Are they being, is it like perhaps a super spreader event of some sort, or is this just, increased testing combination?
Yes and yes. So yes to, we will expect, we see all of the national testing agencies are making testing more widely available. So we do expect with that to see increased reports. And we know that gatherings, large gatherings that have been in DC, but also up and down the eastern seaboard, could be contributing to increased cases in major metropolitan areas. I, of course, have been briefed, and our health department is very focused on how we're disseminating information about monkeypox, but to include vaccination information. We do have a website that we stood up, and it will feel familiar to people like our COVID website. And so it will have information on people who are eligible for the vaccine right now. We continue to have a limited amount of vaccine that is being distributed by the federal government to us. And we are making that vaccine available through a pre-registration process. My team will give me the exact website so we can report it before we leave. And we will continue to distribute the vaccine that way. Unlike the COVID vaccine, it appears that we have a relatively little hesitancy about taking the vaccine, so that as we get vaccine and people get pre-registered, we know that they will be vaccinated. So we'll continue to get out information. We have a pretty handy graphic that speaks to populations who are eligible right now to get the vaccine, and we ask you to distribute that through all your channels.
And then I have a question for the director. Has your office paused termination notices for the rapid rehousing program, or are those termination notices still being sent out?
They're paused for now.
Any idea when we should expect to see them?
No, we're assessing resources and that were newly appropriated, as well as we're starting our enrollment in a number of other programs that people exiting rapid rehousing will be eligible for. Our Career Map program, our DC Flex expansion, and we will, of course, give folks at least 60 days notice, but as much notice as possible should we resume termination notices.
Thank you.
Mark? Okay, I'll come to you.
Yes, on this topic, Doctor, could you update us or remind us? I know you had the point count recently and you saw a lot of good numbers go down. Can you remind us what the numbers were for this community, both adult and unaccompanied youth? Did those numbers go up in the last count? What were they?
We had a reduction in the number of adults experiencing homelessness. I'm going to see if I have that number on me. Just give me 1 second, Mark. Our youth number, if I recall, was slightly higher. We also opened, as I think we explained when we announced our point-in-time numbers, more beds for youth, and that normally is a population that we is where homelessness is less visible, and our count can be less accurate. So when we were counting more young people, we took that actually as a success, that we were serving more people in need, rather consistent with the way we look at our youth count, which is a week-long count that we do every year to get a better understanding on the nature of youth homelessness in our community. So we didn't see a major increase, but we saw an increase commensurate with our increase in resources for youth in our point-in-time count. And Mark, I can follow up with the raw numbers after this. I don't think I have them in front of me today.
To be clear, the numbers for adult LGBTQ community, that you saw those go down?
I don't have the breakdown of that data in front of me today, but we can again follow up with that to the degree to which we have data analysis by how people identify.
I appreciate that. And Mayor Bowser, if I could follow up on monkeypox.
Yes.
We'll recall in the early days of COVID, your administration was really out front of the country in providing up-to-date data for the public to know about number of cases, new cases, spread, really got granular as far as demographics and geographics. The same with vaccines. When can we expect to see that same kind of data come out? The CDC website is the only website anyone can go to see the number of cases, and that is definitely lagging behind real time here in the district. So, one, do you have a number for today, what the number of cases, known cases are in today? How many people have been hospitalized or are hospitalized now? And then my original question, are you considering when would we see that kind of data put up daily like we saw in COVID?
I do know the number. It is, but I'm not remembering it off the top of my head. I want to say it's about 80 is the number. And that is since we reported our first case, I believe, early June. That case, though, was the exposure happened, I think, at the end of May. So we will report cases. I don't know yet what the cadence will be, and we don't have anybody hospitalized.
And then can you update us on vaccine allotment? What is this seems like deja vu to a lot of us, right? The same conversations in the early days of COVID. What is our allotment, and is it equitable, unlike it was in the early days of COVID?
It is. We've received, I believe, just over 8,000 doses. We made available our pre-registration site this week, and we will distribute those doses to people who are eligible. And when we get another tranche of vaccine, we will have the same process. It is a 2-dose vaccine. We estimate that we need 100,000 doses to distribute to the currently eligible population. Yes. Hold on one second. Let me get you a microphone because I can't hear you.
I'm a community activist, a writer, and a gay rights defender. Mayor, I'm extremely grateful to you for all the works that you have done so far for the LGBTQ community, including this shelter year. Mayor, I'm a little concerned because there is this word that you are lesbian and you are in this closet. Why is that the case?
Well, what? Well, I'm not in the closet. Okay. What's the question? Yes, next question.
Yes, Mayor. One, as I understand it from Mrs. Zeilinger, maybe she'd be the one to ask this, but my understanding is that right now trans women go to the women's shelter. At least I've heard women at the shelter say that. Does this change that policy at all?
People go to the shelter based on the gender that they identify with, and we work really hard to train our providers so that they're offering culturally competent and welcoming, safe, affirming spaces. So none of our policies will change, but except for that now we have an alternative for people for whom what we offer in the low barrier shelter system does not feel safe, or this feels like a different alternative that they would prefer.
Yeah.
I was up on Yorktown Road yesterday. There was a resident who said she was concerned about a tree falling on her house. And they had a situation up there where a couple of trees came down in the middle of the street, and they're probably still without power. But in any event, She said she could find somebody to cut the tree down for $2,500, but she had to pay $5,000 for a city permit because it's considered a heritage tree. What about that issue if you think there's a tree threatening your house?
We have a process for tree. Listen, I was on Yorktown Road this morning before I came here. And we had significant damage from the storm the other night, 2 days ago on Tuesday. 2 big trees took down basically 2 big poles, the transformers, the cable, you name it, everything with it. Pepco had crews working there all day yesterday, and they're sending even more crews to work there this morning. There's 65 residents who are impacted, don't have power, don't have cable on a very hot day like today. Our crews are impacted because they're working out in these conditions to get people restored just as soon as possible. So these were some big trees that caused a lot of damage. No damage to anyone's home, so nobody's house got crushed, and no damage to any people. Nobody lost their lives. So we feel good about that, and the work is being done to restore it. Now, your other question sounds like it's a tree that didn't come down. That's probably a healthy tree. But if you see, trees like that come down in your neighborhood, you start looking at all the trees suspiciously. So I just want to ask neighbors to continue to follow the processes that are available to DDOT, because if it is a dangerous tree, the same permit processes the same fees don't apply. But you need to contact and do everything the right way. Okay. I'm going to take a couple more questions, and then we're going to cut the ribbon. Yes, Erlene. Where's the microphone for Erlene?
Thank you. I'm sorry. As I said, I'm not here to beat you guys up. You know I am. I'm an advocate. But at the end of the day, there are advocates like myself. I'm 63 years old. I'm HIV positive. I went through everything what one can go through in terms of being estranged from family at 13, went through youth service and all that. The planning of this is great we have this building, but the planning should have, let me say it again, should have included members of the transgender and other communities like those that we serve at HIPS on a daily basis, and that was not offered. I just found out about this last night, and that's sad. It's sad to be an advocate and find out last night, can't find out who's spearheading it. So at the end of the day, I'm happy for it, but understand also, one comment, you're in the midst of a terrible neighborhood where 2 transgenders in 2005, Stephanie Yukir, were brutally shot blocks away from here in a car. This area has not totally changed. So I see the fences up. I'm assuming there's going to be security, and my community that's coming are going to be protected. And please make sure it's fair and equity, because every time we open something like this, transgenders end up being the least housed in these programs. Thank you so very much, and I'm here for the future program planning, because this one has been done, and it's beautiful.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And as the representative of all the district's neighborhoods, we don't have terrible neighborhoods. We may have neighborhoods that need more investment. We may have neighborhoods that have been overlooked for too long. And we recognize those as opportunities. Okay, I'm going to have to take the last question and get to the ribbon cutting. Okay.
Hi, I'm Miriam Jones, and I also work for HIPS. My question about the shelter is, are you guys going to offer direct medical services, or will it just be referrals and linkage to care?
Okay.
We will have linkages to care here, and I want to just explain that people are here for a temporary stay, but their linkages to care are best when they're lasting. So we want to make sure that they have a provider who they want to work with, that they are linked to a provider that can continue with them as they gain stable housing, and they don't have to shift their health care when they move out of shelter. And so that's why. it's for as long as it takes for folks to find permanency somewhere.
All right, let's cut the ribbon.
We now return to our previously scheduled program, already in progress.
Again, go out the parking lot and then up the sidewalk.
Wonderful, so inspiring. Thank you for sharing your.
That was making me. You with me on this one? Okay. You good, James? Good? Everybody good? I'm good. Which one? You good? I'm good. Everybody good?
Mike, did you see? I didn't see him. Okay, he may have gone. Yeah, get there, K-Bat.
Japer. Okay, okay, on the count of three. Do we have everybody? Did he get in the picture? Oh, where is he?
Where's your picture? Come bring mine. Check it out.
He's coming. He's running.
How you been?
Great, how are you?
I'm good.
Don't run with scissors.
Here, Japer.
There you go.
You bet. Okay, on the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
We now return to our previously scheduled program, already in progress.